City of Los Angeles tenant and landlord updates. Next page. How to determine if you live within the City of Los Angeles. LAPD in your neighborhood, DWP is your utility provider. Other than that, you can feel free to call the hotline number to verify, and we'll be able to assist you. Next slide. Rent stabilization ordinance or just cause for eviction ordinance. Los Angeles City Rent Stabilization Ordinance under the City of Los Angeles Municipal Code. 650,000 rental units covered under the rent stabilization ordinance and 390,000 rental units covered under the just cause ordinance. Next slide. Well, how to know if your rental property is subject to the RSO or JCO? You can go to zemis.lacity.org and enter your address. If the RSO field says yes, then it is RSO. I will caution you that this website is not under the jurisdiction of LAHD. So you may want to, once again, call the hotline number or go into one of your local offices for Los Angeles Housing Department to verify as well. You can also text RSO to 855-880-7368 and enter your address. Next slide. Registration. Registration fees, $38.75 per RSO unit, $31.05 per just cause ordinance units, $67.94 SCEP fees per rental unit. Once fees are paid by the landlord, 50% of the fees can be passed through to the tenants and only collected on a monthly basis, only for RSO. Landlords must provide the tenant a written 30-day notice in advance before collecting said pass-through charges. The registration pass-through monthly will be $1.61. That's the RSO fee, and $2.83 per month for the SCEP fee, totaling $4.44. Next slide. Annual registration includes the payment of fees and submission of the rent registry form. Next slide. Posted notices on property. RSO and JCO renter protection notices. Landlords of residential properties to provide a summary of renters' rights for tenancies that commenced or were renewed on or after January 27th, 2023. This notice must also be posted in an accessible common area of the property. To get a copy, you can go to that website listed there. You could also walk into a front counter and retrieve a copy of the renters protection notices. Next slide. Let's see, a registration statement of certificate is given to a landlord once the registration fees have been paid and the rent registry is completed. Registration certificates copy must be given to the tenant and posted for RSO units and given and posted for JCO units as well. Next slide. Ooh. Here. Right to counsel. The right to counsel, also known as the Eviction Defense Program, provides qualifying tenants with the access to legal representation in eviction and administrative proceedings that may result in the termination of the tenant's tenancy or rental housing subsidy. For tenants, if you receive a LA Superior Court document, an unlawful detainer, you must respond to the court within 10 days. For legal assistance, contact Stay Housed LA or call the number provided there. For landlords, effective August 20th, 2025, landlords are required to provide a notice of right to counsel at the beginning of a tenancy in the tenant's primary language, attach a notice of right to counsel to a copy of any eviction notice served on the tenant, attach a notice of right to counsel to any notice of termination of a rental housing subsidy, Section 8, attach a notice of right to counsel to any Section 8 administrative proceeding correspondence that may result in termination of tenant's rental housing subsidy, post the notice of right to counsel in a conspicuous common area of the residential building where the tenant resides. Next slide. Two types of rent increases: approval not required, LHD approval required. RSO rent increases. Rent stabilization ordinance rent increases, surcharges that do not require housing department approval. Vacancy decontrolled, annual allowable rent increases, additional tenant rent increases, pass-through of installation costs for smoke detectors, carbon monoxide detectors. JCO does not cover rent increases. Next slide. See, vacancy decontrolled, may charge market rate if tenant moves out voluntarily, evicted for non-payment, lease violation, tenant habitability plan, compliance with city attorney order. Condos pre-1996, tenants are protected by full rent control. Post-1996, tenants are subject to registration and eviction protections only. Next slide. Effective July 1st, 2025 until June 30th, 2026, the annual allowable increase is 3%. For RSO properties, an additional 1% for gas and 1% for electric service can be added if the landlord provides 100% of the service for the tenant. RSO annual rent increases are allowed only once every 12 months. Let's see. RSO rent increases prohibited from March 2020 to January 2023. That was the rent freeze ordinance. A written 30-day notice is required for rent increases 10% or less. Security deposits may be increased by the same percentage, may be imposed only if 12 months or more since the last increase. Next slide. RSO security deposit interest currently is 4.32%. Interest payable can be determined two ways: use the simple interest rate as listed above, or pay the actual amount earned on the security deposits. Landlords must provide the tenant with a copy of a bank statement indicating their earned interest for the years. RSO properties only. Interest required if a security deposit held for at least 1 year. Interest can be paid monthly or on a yearly basis depending on the landlord's choosing. Interest can be payable as a payment or rent credit. Upon the end of tenancy, the landlord must include all accumulated interest in the same manner as when the security deposit is returned. Next slide. 10%, let's see, rent increases, approval not required. 10%. 10% increase allowed for each additional tenant in the unit. No increase for the first minor dependent child added to tenancy. Notify tenant with written notice within 60 days of actual or constructive knowledge of additional tenant. Next slide. Smoke carbon monoxide detector installation required by law. Rate of monthly charge is $3 per detector. Requires written notice within 2 months of installation. See the Rent Adjustment Commission Regulation 340-00 for more information. Next slide. RSO rent increases approval required. There are 6 rent adjustment programs: capital improvement program, primary renovation, seismic retrofit, rehabilitation work program, just and reasonable rent increase, luxury exemption program. You can go to housing.lacity.org and search cost recovery programs to get more details. Next slide. 2 types of evictions: at fault, not at fault. RSO and JCO evictions at fault are as follows: non-payment of rent, lease violation, nuisance, drug and gangs, illegal purpose, failure to renew like lease, denial of access, subtenant not approved, failure to relocate per tenant habitability plan. Applies only to RSO units. Next slide. RSO and JCO evictions not at fault. owner, family, manager occupancy, demolition, permanent removal from the rental market, that's an Alice eviction, government order, convert to affordable housing, convert residential hotel to another use, HUD foreclosures. All not at fault evictions require declarations to be submitted to the housing department and the payment of relocation assistance to tenants. Next slide. RSO and JCO requirements for legal evictions may only evict for a legal reason under RSO and JCO. For no fault evictions, landlords must file a declaration of intent to evict with the Los Angeles Housing Department. Give tenant 30, 60, 90, 120 day or 6-month notice per state law. Pay relocation assistance for no fault evictions. Next slide. Relocation assistance. A qualified tenant is any tenant who on the date of the service of the written notice of termination is 62 years of age or older, handicapped or disabled, or who has one or more minor dependent children. A tenant that is not considered qualified tenant is an eligible tenant. A low-income tenant is a tenant whose household income is 80% or less of the area median income. Mom and pop relocation assistance applies only for evictions for landlord family occupancy or resident manager occupancy. A mom and pop landlord owns no more than 4 or fewer rental units in a single family home on a separate lot in the city of Los Angeles. Low-income tenants displaced by demolition for new construction may receive higher relocation assistance. You can view the tenant protection fact sheet, or you can do this online at housing.lacity.gov, or you can also come into one of the front counters to receive this information. Next slide. Tenant buyout notification program. RSO buyout agreements. A buyout agreement is a written agreement where a landlord pays a tenant money or other consideration to voluntarily move out of their unit. Tenants are not required to accept a buyout agreement. Tenant must receive the RSO disclosure notice before signing an agreement. Tenants may rescind agreements within 30 days or any time if the requirements are not met. Form an agreement must be filed with the housing department within 60 days. For more information, you can go to the housing department website, call the hotline number, or go to the front counters. Next slide. Tenant anti-harassment ordinance. Let's see. Tenant anti-harassment protections apply to all residential units in the city of Los Angeles. Tenant harassment is defined as a landlord's knowing and willful course of conduct directed at a tenant that seriously alarms or annoys the tenant and serves no legitimate purpose. Landlords are prohibited from doing the following acts done to harass the tenants, which can be viewed on the website. You can call the hotline number or come to the front counter to actually get all the prescribed things. It is important for tenants to keep records by taking notes of each harassing event. Tenants should keep a log with dates, times, get statements and from neighbors, and take pictures. If a tenant feels that they are in physical danger, call LAPD or dial 911. Next slide. To strengthen the ordinance, the Los Angeles City Council amended the Tahoe ordinance effective December 29th, 2024 to enhance tenant protections to include mandatory damages for the prevailing party in a civil action, among other modifications. Redefinition of harassment definition updated to include bad faith conduct by landlords. Bad faith defined as willful, reckless, or grossly negligent conduct aims to make it easier for tenants to prove harassment. Mandatory damages and penalties, treble damage awards to winning tenants, including compensation for mental and emotional distress, minimum civil penalty of $2,000 per violation, Proposed increase of penalty of $10,000 per violation was discussed. Attorney fees must be awarded to tenant who win in court. Let's see. So prohibited acts of harassment, landlords prohibited from various acts, including taking away lease services, failing to make timely repairs, abusing access to tenant units, threatening physical harm, coercing tenants to move out, misrepresenting eviction reasons, interfering with tenant privacy rights, changing tenancy terms unilaterally, prohibiting on inquiring about tenants' criminal history. Next slide. Eviction for non-payment of rent. Let's see. Landlords may not evict a tenant who falls behind on rent unless the tenant owes an amount higher than the fair market rate. The fair market rate depends on the bedroom size of the rental unit. For example, if a tenant rents a one-bedroom unit, the landlord cannot evict the tenant if the tenant rent owed is less than the fair market rent for a one-bedroom unit. So currently it's $2,006 for a one-bedroom unit. Actually, 2025 is $2,081. So it'd be the top one. This will also be on a renter's protection sheet that's supposed to be posted. You can also come into the front counter, call the hotline number to obtain this information. Next slide. Economic displacement. Tenants who receive a rent increase of more than 8% from August 1st, 2025 to July 31st, 2026 within 12 months are unable to afford the rent increase have an option to receive relocation assistance to move out of their rental unit instead. The relocation amount is based on the size of the bedroom in the rental unit. Relocation assistance for tenants who rent a single-family dwelling is 1 month's rent if the landlord is a natural person who owns no more than 4 residential units in a single-family dwelling on a separate lot in the city of Los Angeles. Once again, this is on the tenant protection sheet. You can come into your local front counter or call the hotline number to ascertain this information. Filing eviction notice. Next slide. Notice to terminate tenancy eviction filing. Any written notice terminating a tenancy must be filed with the Los Angeles Housing Department within 3 business days of service on the tenant per the municipal code. You can file it online, housing.lacity.org/eviction-notices. Notices to terminate based on non-payment of rent must include the number of bedrooms. A landlord's failure to file a copy with the LAHD is an affirmative defense to an unlawful detainer. To find out if a notice was filed, you can visit that website. You can come to the front counter. You can call the hotline number. For no-fault evictions, this filing requirement is in addition to the requirement to file a declaration of intent to evict with the Los Angeles Housing Department. Next slide. How to contact LAHD. Submit questions 24/7 at that website, housing.lacity.org/ask-housing. Report RSO violations by calling the LAHD hotline number or online. For City of Los Angeles residents, visit Landlord and Tenant updates. You can also call the hotline and or come to a front counter to file complaints. The LAHD general hotline number located there, and RSVP for workshops 866-557-7368, same as the hotline number. And there's a newsletter located on the city website. And thank you